All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It's a Monday, but it's not a Monday with Arlen, or Arlen Monday if you prefer, since Arlen is with his family on this holiday, actually Labor Day. So we'll have Arlen next Monday. I decided I was going to go ahead and do the show. I try not to ever take off a weekday, even if it's a federal holiday, if I'm available, if I'm here. Now, there will be days I'll take off. Even in the fall, I'll be away for the final Monday, I believe, the final Monday of the month, or maybe it's the first Monday of October. I'm not sure which one it is. I guess it's the 30th, so that's September 30th. That would be the last Monday of this month. So yeah, I will be off, but if I'm here, if I'm available, I do my show. I feel like that's the very, very least I can do. This is, really, really important to me. I called the program The Only Choice. I also could have called it The Easy, or I did in some places actually, when I posted my little cheat sheet or checklist or what have you of the candidates, call it Easy Choice. And I do think it's an easy choice. I actually posted this in response to a tweet, which I don't have, by Nomiki Konst, who's really become a complete, as I guess the term was invented by Jimmy Dore. I think it fits. She's a true S-lib. I won't use the full S, but, somebody who just mouths liberal pieties, but supports every Democratic candidate regardless, doesn't hold Democrats accountable. So, that's who she is. And she was real negative about Cornel West, Dr. West, getting on the ballot in Georgia, and she kind of mocked him for his effort, I guess, as she sees it, to defeat Harris, thinking that West will take votes from Harris. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't really even understand that, because I would not vote for Kamala Harris. People are so after me. You're hurting Harris. You're really voting for Trump. And I'm like, I don't understand that. You could just as easily say, by supporting Jill Stein, I'm backing Harris. I'm telling people, don't vote for Trump, vote for Stein. Everyone's like, oh, you're saying don't vote for Stein, or you're saying don't vote for Kamala Harris. You have to vote for Jill Stein. You're helping Trump. But I'm just as much saying, don't vote for Donald Trump, vote for Jill Stein. It's not like I'm, only telling Harris, people who might lean Harris, to vote for Stein. I'm also telling people who might lean Trump, vote for Stein. She's just better. If you have a position, let me give you an example of that. And here's my little list you've got. I'm going to go right through this. I'm going to try to do the whole program in 1 hour. By the way, a lot of comments, a lot of criticism of what I've been posting lately. People really upset about it. They cannot understand why I don't support Harris, why I'm so negative on Harris. And I frankly don't understand how you don't understand that. I don't understand how you aren't negative on Harris. She's not progressive on any issues. And I have made it clear, starting back in July, that I was open to the possibility of voting for Kamala Harris. As bad as she is on the issues, or had been up to that point, if she did a volte-face when it comes to Israel, because that is so critically important, that issue, I would tell you, vote for Kamala Harris. But she's not. She's all in for the genocide. She's all in for the state that weaponizes rape. So how could I possibly support her? What possible moral authority would I have if I said, yes, you should vote for one of the two duopoly candidates who's all in for, she's a border wall. She supports the border wall, which is an awful policy, by the way. I'm not just saying it's bad because Trump supports it. It's a bad policy. Fracking. She's all in for fracking. She's all complete unconditional support for Israeli genocide. Endless war with Russia. She's worse than Trump on that issue. Endless war with Iran. Just as bad as Trump on that issue. Okay, I wouldn't call her a fascist. Trump's a fascist. She's not a fascist. Trump, would really wants to just stop our practice of even choosing presidents. He just wants to, it's clear. And that was what he did, I believe, on January 6th, was insurrectionist light. I don't think Harris is there, but she's a proto-fascist. She takes her marching orders from corporations and the military. Anytime fat cat donors who love her, billionaires who love her, anytime they tell her we don't like that policy, she's demonstrated she's very, very flexible. So she's a proto-fascist. The only candidate who supports what's a truly good policy, Medicare for all, Jill Stein. So I think this is an easy choice. I don't see how there's really an argument. Now you say, well, what about West? What about Claudia de la Cruz? Okay. My problem with Cornel West is that he should have been the Green Party candidate. He chose not to be. He pulled back. He won't be on even as many states as Stein, and she won't be on every ballot. But you can write her in, which you should if you can't pull the lever for her or circle the, fill in the oval or however the vote is done in your state. But I would be absolutely 100% for West. In fact, I was really elated when he said he was going to run as a Green, but then he stopped. And so he's got no institutional support whatsoever. So no, I don't support Dr. West. And Claudia de la Cruz, Peace and Socialism Party, I think it's called. She sounds really interesting. But again, she's not on, nearly as many ballots. She's not as well known. I don't see anything to dislike to really, there's things about the Green Party platform I don't love. I think they are more focused on identity politics than I am. And, I wish they were a little more they centered workers and working class, maybe a little more, but I'm sure a Green Party advocate, activist, member could push back very effectively on that concern that I have, which is maybe they don't center the working class. They don't center class analysis the way I do, the way I view. And not even as much class, but just simply wealth and income inequality is, such a driver of the problems. But yeah, she's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. She's the best candidate by a long shot. And it's not as though Harris is good but flawed. She's really, really, really bad on all of these issues. One point I just will respond to, then we're going to get to the Gaza death toll, which is where I generally lead, and we'll go into these a little more detail here, as well as the failure of many progressive news media types to hold the Democrats accountable. The complete failure of people like, well, I shouldn't even say people like, the complete failure, abnegation, whatever the word is, abrogation of their duty as truth tellers, or so-called, of people, including David Sirota, Kyle Kulinski. I never liked Emma Vigeland, Jeet Heer from The Nation. We'll hear from all of them. Cenk Uygur comes out the least bad of any of them. Interesting, isn't it? But not a complete shock, because I believe he's Muslim. He is Turkish. He has that connection to the Palestinian people that the others don't. So I think he's a little bit more troubled, as we all should be, by the Israeli genocide. The people can't. Yeah, let's get right into it. So centering the most victimized people on the planet right now, Palestinians, and among Palestinians, the most victimized are those who live in Gaza. We have 40,786 death count as of this morning, and it's actually gone up. There are more dead by Israel, more killed by Israel since early this morning. So that's up from 40,602, I believe, was the official number on Thursday. I didn't get a number for Friday. We also have 48 dead at the hands of the Israeli military in Gaza. I don't have numbers for the West Bank. I apologize for that. It was putting a lot of stuff together, but we know the occupation with the, fangs bared is being, carried out very aggressively now in the West Bank by Israel. 48 dead during the last 24 hours, according to the Hamas health ministry. You always have to understand those numbers are a little bit, conservative, that the dead are almost certainly more than that. They may be thousands, tens of thousands, maybe over 100,000 more dead at the hands of Israel. Kind of shorthand, the way I like, I don't like to look at it. The way I do look at it is that the Biden-Harris administration has supported the Israeli killing machine with now, since October 7, 40,786 Palestinians and nearly 200, I believe the number I have, 184 dead over the past 4 days. 40,602 was the number I had as of Thursday evening. So it's just horrific. That's what we are supporting. I don't know how you can say it's okay to vote for Harris under those circumstances. I just don't get it. If you want to explain to me, please do. I'll listen. I'm a big believer in dialogue. I'm a big believer in trying to have conversations with people. Unfortunately, it's very, very difficult. These issues do not lend themselves often to a back and forth. I applaud, we'll get into this right in just a moment, I really applaud the American University for trying, apparently, at least according to the Washington Post. I know they're not always the most reliable source, but they're pretty reliable when they report facts. Apparently, the American University is really trying now to have a dialogue between the pro-Palestinian students and those who, the Zionists. So that's great. I was down at GWU last week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I got the dates. Probably was 2 weeks ago, I believe, where there was a rally for Palestine. And that campus has a high percentage of Jewish students. It has a Jewish chancellor, I believe, is her title, Granberg. And they have been very, very harsh in their response to pro-Palestine protests. So this is what this article in the Washington Post is about. And we'll go through it. One last caveat or one last note. Some of you who feel that I give Palestine a pass. I give Gaza a pass. I give Hamas a pass. I give their supporters a pass. I'm going to have some words here for at least one pro-Palestine event that I think is tone deaf. We'll talk about that. So what are some of these protests that we're looking at coming up? So from the University of Maryland, this guy, I think his name is Herschel Barnstein, Jewish Voice for Peace chapter. So they're pro-Palestine, says what he wants to do at the University of Maryland is get a divestment resolution through. The chancellor's there. Good luck. I hope you have some success. I doubt it'll happen. But because they are engaged in dialogue, and this really shows you, by the way, that when universities and their administrators are willing to talk to protesters, are willing to talk and listen, have a dialogue, when they're willing to do that, then the students are invariably reasonable. So here, the Jewish Voice for Peace, pro-Palestine, anti-Zionist, anti-genocide group said, hey, we're not even going to do an encampment. This is something that, for whatever reason, which I don't fully understand, but many, many administrators at colleges don't want those encampments. They don't like the tents, on the quads. It doesn't look great. To me, if I was at that school, it wouldn't bother me particularly. I guess it would depend on what the rally was for. I know at Wesleyan, they said you can have your tents up. Same at Brown, but then they did dialogue. They talked to the students and they tried to come up, in other words, the pro-Palestine protesters, and they did come up with acceptable solutions, at least in the short run. We'll see how long those solutions last. What Barnstein is saying, Jewish Voice for Peace is saying at Maryland is, hey, we are having what we consider to be dialogue, productive dialogue with the administration. So we are not right now going to have an encampment at Maryland, but we will support the one at George Washington University, which has been, again, George Washington been a particularly challenging environment for those who are fighting the Israeli genocide. So I think that seems like a legitimate, reasonable position for this pro-Palestine Jewish Voice for Peace to take at the University of Maryland, which, by the way, is my younger son's alma mater. Got a great education there. Hats off for a tiny fraction. Well, I wouldn't say it was tiny, but less than a third what it would have cost if he had gone to a comparable private institution. But Barnstein said, hey, for now, we're not going to be doing any kind of a, I'm going to move my mic down just a bit. We're not going to be doing any encampments. But that could change if the administration persists in hamstringing our efforts to organize, if they fight us tooth and nail on any resolutions, if they change rules, then we're not going to, then we may go ahead and start an encampment. And other students at that school, the university, are saying we don't have infinite patience. This will last as long as we feel that the university is responsive to us. It's interesting that, and we'll get into it, one of the actions at the University of Maryland that is causing a lot of consternation among many Jewish students does seem like the university really Maryland has been very responsive to the pro-peace, anti-genocide students. And that may also be a big reason why, it just occurred to me, we'll get into that, just occurred to me that may be a big reason for the decision not to have an encampment at this time. So let me just highlight that. I'm going to jump forward a little bit. So remember, the students at Maryland, the University of Maryland, have said we're not going to put up tents. And this is what the university apparently really, really don't like. I don't know why. I don't know why those tents are so upsetting to them. I think maybe alumni come by, they don't like to look at it. Donors feel like the administrators have lost control of their school. I think that may be the reason. I think it's a little bit, I think they're overly concerned about that issue, but I don't know. Maybe the alumni office has said, you gotta do everything you can to keep those tents off the campus. Maybe that's the reason. So what happened at Maryland? The students, the SJP chapter, that's Students for Justice in Palestine. Now, they work very, very closely. SJP worked very closely with Jewish Voice for Peace, but they don't always do everything together. And it's never been my sense that SJP is more radical, more aggressively pro-Palestine than JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace. But I've always wondered, right? Because still Jewish Voice for Peace, it's not the Jews who are being oppressed. It's not Jews who are being persecuted. It's not Jews who are being murdered in Gaza. It's Palestinians. So I've always thought, well, gee, maybe SJP would be a little more aggressive. And I think maybe they are at Maryland. So you see SJP has reserved McKeldin Hall, that is McKeldin Mall. So McKeldin's the library. It's beautiful, by the way. I always thought Maryland wasn't the most beautiful campus. It's true, some of the areas right outside the campus or off-campus housing, not all so pretty. There's some campus housing that isn't so attractive. But the mall itself is very, very nice, all brick. It's not Gothic, but brick. It's very, very nice. So McKeldin Mall, which is the quad right in front of the library there, you can see it from Route 1. It backs off of Route 1 up a hill. It's very, very attractive, very lovely. They have reserved it for an unspecified group action on October 7th, the first anniversary of the Hamas attack. This has really caused a lot of uproar. a lot of the Jewish groups, the Hillel organization on campus, a lot of alumni. My son, who is one of my sons, the one who is a Maryland graduate, has indicated to me, he works closely with, although he's not in the athletic department, but he works with the athletic department, many donors to the athletic department as boosters, supporters of University of Maryland Terrapin Sports, have said, we're not going to give right now. We are really, really upset about the decision to allow SJP to have a group action on the 7th, which is, of course, the day, the anniversary of the Hamas attack, the terrorist attack by Hamas. So I'm of two minds. I will almost never criticize what the victims are doing, what the oppressed are doing, what the persecuted are doing. So Palestinians are oppressed. The Students for Justice in Palestine are doing what little they can, which tragically isn't very much, to try to make life a little bit better, a little bit easier, maybe to stop the killing if they possibly can by Israel in Palestine. I don't know that I love the decision. I don't think you necessarily had to do this rally on the 7th. Now, I get it. You'll get a lot of attention for doing it. And the 7th isn't only the anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel. Israel began its retaliation, or the pretext that, the retaliation as a pretext for its genocide in earnest on October 7th. So it's not only a tragic day for Palestine, or for Israel. October 7th obviously was a bad day for Israel. It's a bad day for Palestine. Israel began even more aggressively, more murderously its crackdown, which it hasn't stopped on the 7th. So the day has resonance, painful resonance for Palestinians. And they may well be saying, no, we have to stop the genocide that Israel really began in earnest. I'm not saying they weren't already cracking down, persecuting, oppressing Palestinians, killing Palestinians in large numbers. But the systematic dismantling of Gaza really began on that same day. So I understand the significance of October 7 for the SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, but still, the day does resonate right now as the day of the attack by Hamas, a terrorist attack, that, over 1,000 killed. If your goal is, and I think one of their main goals for SJP should be to try to build bridges, to try to make alliances with folks. They're not going to make alliances with the Zionists. They're not going to be able to have an alliance probably with the Hillel kids. But this makes it even tougher. So I grudgingly don't love that decision. But I also think that it may well be that one of the reasons that the University of Maryland did approve the petition for the event on the 7th is that there was pressure by the SJP that said, hey, you don't like the encampments, right? You don't want tents. Let us have our rally on the 7th. And if that's true, that's really smart by SJP. That's good negotiating tactic by SJP. There's two things you don't want, Maryland. You don't want encampments. You don't want a rally on the 7th. Well, you get one of them. You choose. That's pretty shrewd if that's what SJP did. I don't know if that is. That's pretty smart if it was. That said, I probably would have recommended negotiating for another date. But I'm not in a position to tell SJP what they should or shouldn't do in their efforts for freedom, for liberation. They're the oppressed group. They're the persecuted ones. They're the ones whose family members are being killed. So if they think this is the best strategy or the best tactic, all I can do is express my reservations and say at the same time, I support what you're doing. I support your efforts to end any backing of Israel by the University of Maryland. I support your efforts to educate people as to what Israel's doing, even if I think this may not be the best way to do it. I really like what the American University is doing, and I'm going to get into this just in a little bit more detail. So, from the same Washington Post article, a new American University president, Jonathan Alger, announced the Dialogues Across Differences initiative. And there's like this, boilerplate, this is going to advance our inclusive excellence work and key values. I mean, there's a lot of gobbledygook, doesn't mean anything to me. What I think it means is that they're going to try to have pro-Palestine Zionists and Zionist students talk to each other in a controlled setting where each is urged strongly to listen to the other. You know, one of the ways you have these dialogues, and they have to be under control, you have to have some kind of a neutral arbiter, somebody who's viewed as an honest broker. So obviously the United States is not an honest broker when it comes to Israel-Palestine. The United States is fully on board. The United States is backing and supporting and supplying the Israeli weapons of genocide. So obviously we're not an honest broker. But the American University could be an honest broker between the Zionist students and the Palestinian, pro-Palestine students. They could, and I hope they are. And if you are going to bring these people together, you get 5 representatives from each, you go into a hall, you invite the whole university to come in. You have, I think this is so important, I'd have the school president, for crying out loud, be the moderator. And I'd go back and forth and I'd have each of them speak, and I'd ask them to talk about what, are most important to them, what they've seen, what upsets them, how come they're hurt. And I would force the other side to actively listen and actively respond. So if an Israeli student, or a pro-Israel or Zionist, I'll even let them start, just because this is so important as a pro-Palestinian to me to have this dialogue. They start saying, I saw the bodies that were slaughtered by Hamas, and it was so upsetting. And I saw red. I can't see humanity in people who do that. And if you had a student say that, then you have a pro-Palestine student respond. But the first thing they have to do is say, okay, I want you to repeat what the pro-Israel student said, and I want you to respond to their feelings. And the response would be something like this: well, you saw a lot of Israelis killed, and it was very upsetting to you, and you're very angry, and your first thought was, I'm going to support a reprisal against Palestine. That's what I would would expect the Palestinian students to say, and then have the Palestinian students say, I get it. We understand your pain, and we have been living with that pain as well. And, you move on and you say, okay, how can we solve this? Where can we get to a place where there won't be further killing? And if the Israeli says, well, I want there to be consequences for those who are responsible for October 7, and you say, well, haven't there been consequences? Look what's happened to Gaza. Is that not enough? So you can have this dialogue, and maybe you get someplace. I would hope, but to me, that's the solution. And I bring that up because I want the killing to end. But I also bring it up because I was asked over the weekend. I was with some friends, people I really care about, I like. Good, I believe. I mean, it's a little condescending. They're good, decent people. Like, who the hell am I to decide? But yes, caring people. And, we could not come to any kind of we could not have a conversation. We could not have a dialogue about this, what I've got on my screen here. We could not, because their view, I think it's clear, is that, Trump is out of order category. You can't, he's different. He's not a Nazi. And Harris is just better. And I think when someone has that position, it's really, really hard to have a dialogue. And my position is Trump is really, really bad. I get the fascism. I don't think he's a Nazi. I haven't seen that. So I don't think he's not calling for, Hitler was calling for Jews to be exterminated. They were an evil presence. They were a cancer in the German body, he never hit anything like that. And we didn't see that kind of policy from Trump either, that kind of overt targeting of an ethnic group, the way, yes to immigrants, but not a specific ethnic group or religion. So I don't think Trump's not Hitler, but I get that Trump's really bad. I understand that, but I think so was Harris. And I think we're in a situation right now where we need, things are so serious we need to move to a different place. I've been extremely upset in terms of moving to a different place. Who can have the dialogue? Because I said the only way we're going to get there is if we have a dialogue. I think, I'm the kind of, what I do is have a dialogue. This is what I view as a dialogue. It's a one-sided dialogue. You're only hearing me. I hear you in a lot of places. I hear you on social media. I hear you in emails because some of you email me. But I hear you when I'm visiting friends. But I'd like it to be a back and forth. I don't have a huge audience. I have a small audience. I have a relatively minuscule compared to the people whose videos I'm going to play right now. And I think it's very unfortunate that folks who are in a position to perhaps have a productive conversation with their followers or their audience about why this isn't working, why the duopoly isn't working, why Kamala Harris isn't the solution. And unfortunately, they're not. Many of those progressives or self-described, self-proclaimed progressives aren't. So let's go to the video. I think this is, I'm not even sure which, is this, let's find out. We'll find out. I'll just play it right now. We'll find out.
1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were...
So this is the Young Turks. And their Idarola, I believe, is going over what Harris said on CNN about Israel. And I played this clip as well, but we'll keep playing it.
Simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped.
So you know how upset that her centering that claim, her proclaiming that definitively, and it's always Israeli women who are raped by Hamas. There's never, ever any mention by Harris of the weaponization of rape by Israel, which is well documented.
I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done.
So I think that's pretty clear. It's fairly consistent with the convention address that Kamala Harris gave. And I think for a lot of people that wanted to see literally any movement or evolution on this policy, I think they're going to be very disappointed by what they heard right.
All right, so I think that's fair. We are very disappointed. He is correct. Idarola is their reporter, but let's hear from Cenk, because I think, he's their leader, whatever. He's their flagship guy. And I'm going to get into why, just a little bit of detail after we go through this, why what she said, more specifics, why it's just not acceptable to center the claim that there were rapes on October 7 by Hamas. That's just not an that's an excuse. That reflects her justification of the Israeli genocide.
If you're not using your leverage, you're saying, I don't actually want a ceasefire. So it doesn't have anything to do with where you are in the political spectrum. It has to do with, do you have common sense? Do you understand how politics works?
So let me stop it. So what Cenk is saying there, because it's jumped, it was a little bit before I wanted, or it started a little bit before after I wanted to. He's responding to when she says, I'm fighting for a ceasefire. And he's saying, no, you're not. That's a lie. He's saying, you say you're fighting for a ceasefire, but you've also said you'll give Israel everything they want. Those don't go together. If you're giving Israel everything they want, you're not fighting for ceasefire. Cenk is absolutely correct there. So, like I said, of the sort of centrist progressives, he's better than the others. But there's not one word about Jill Stein. He doesn't at any point say, well, you know what, we can't support her now. We can't support this genocidal backer, this backer of genocide. So that's where it's so problematic. It's an awful policy. Her answer is wholly unacceptable. It's completely immoral. And Cenk won't say, yeah, but we're not going to back you.
So you understand how the world works. If you have leverage in anything and you choose not to use it, that's you saying, I don't mind. So when Kamala Harris then answers by saying, we're doing everything we can to get to a ceasefire, that is literally a lie. And there's no one that can say that it's not a lie. Because if you're not using the leverage that would make all the difference in the world and all the leverage that we have, and you're not using any of it, the leverage, we just gave them $26 billion and didn't ask for anything in return. We could have asked for a ceasefire in return. That would have been a very, very, very reasonable ask. By the way, we could have asked for a two-state solution in return. But of course, we'll never ask for any of those things because Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and almost everyone involved in American politics is 100% lying.
All right, so he's right about that. And this is my response. Why don't you then endorse Jill Stein? It's so simple. It's so easy. It's so obvious. This isn't a little deal. This is an enormous deal. Right, from Sam Cedars' team, I don't know what the majority report. He's not on this. Vigeland has been better than others when it comes to condemning Israel. She's got this guy Jeet here on. Let's hear what Vigeland has to say. Emma Vigeland.
Okay, so yeah.
So they can't spin it. They realize how awful it is what she said. That I started it right after her answer, which is no, we're going to keep funding Israel. There's not going to be any change in policy. So she can't. She's like, oh my God, wow.
Running with the no a little bit. It's more to me.
But now she's trying to spin it immediately. It's not really a no. Like when she's saying no, we're not going to change policy, and Vigeland's saying, oh, let me just jump forward a little bit. But now Vigeland's saying, well, it's not quite a no. Let's go through there.
Okay, so yeah. I think people are running with the no a little bit. It's more to me a dismissal than it is an outright declaration of policy. She's trying to not declare anything. Right? She's trying to just get through it, get to
the... Now they're making the excuse, oh, she's just kind of, we don't know. She's maintaining opacity. Israel is murdering at an unprecedented rate Palestinians. How is that okay in anybody's world? To just, oh, well, and she didn't, by the way, that's false, what Vigeland is saying. She didn't sort of try to move on. She was very, very clear. Let's be clear. Israel's defending itself. We're always going to supply. I'm always going to be there for Israel no matter what when they're trying to defend themselves. So she's making an apology. She's apologizing for an awful policy and basically saying, yeah, I'm good with her. I'm good.
The other side. It wouldn't be smart for her to just unilaterally declare policy, even if she agrees with Biden. Let's just stipulate that, right? It wouldn't be smart for her.
Well, it certainly wouldn't be good for her to say, yeah, I'm all in for genocide, but she did say that. So again, your so-called progressives making excuses, making explanations, not declaring definitively what is the truth. This is evil. This is wrong. They have made us as a nation complicit. They, Biden, Harris, are making us complicit in genocide. You don't have allies in progressive media if you demand that we live in a moral country.
To be like, yeah, I'm concretely doing exactly what he's doing, because she's not in the position to do that yet, right?
Sure she is. She could absolutely say, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to do that. Bernie said it. Bernie said, I don't agree with Biden. Why can't she? Of course she can say it. There's no question she can say it. And here I think does make the point, but he's uncomfortable making it. But let's continue.
But still, this is so insufficient, and I don't think that she can get through this election with that by just
so that's what her concern is. Do you hear what Emma Vigeland's concern is? It's an insufficient answer, which of course it's a wrong, it's an immoral, it's an evil answer. But her real concern is, well, maybe Kamala won't win. And that's what we need, is for her to win. Why do you need her to win if she's for genocide? Why would you support somebody who can't condemn Israel's genocide?
That line out like that. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I mean, like, in some ways, she's had the same conundrum as Herbert Humphrey running in '68, where he's like.
Did he say Herbert Humphrey? It was Hubert Humphrey, was it? No, I didn't catch that before, but did he call him Herbert Humphrey? Let's find out.
Conundrum as Herbert Humphrey running.
Yeah, no, this is a guy who is, I believe, the political editor of The Nation. That's like a big deal, right? And he calls him Herbert Humphrey. Now, maybe he just misspoke. Come on. I get things wrong all the time. But there you can see, Jeet, she's had the same conundrum as Herbert Humphrey. Well, I think it was indeed Hubert Humphrey. But okay, whatever. We, like I said, we all misspeak. And I guess I shouldn't expect too much just because you're with The Nation. Mr. Heer.
In '68.
Now, I think he's like Swedish or something. So maybe because he's not American. I think you should know the name of the guy who ran for president in 1968. But his name is on a stadium, right? The Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome in Minneapolis.
Where he's like a vice president, the president's not running, but the president is still the president and is still carrying out an unpopular policy. In Lyndon Johnson's case, a very unpopular policy of the Vietnam War. And it's very hard for a vice president to be critical. But actually, like in '68, towards the end of the election, Humphrey starts to distinguish himself more from Lyndon Johnson. And that was the point where he started to improve in the polls.
All right, so I'll stop it there. So here's even saying, look, that was a mistake by Humphrey not to distinguish himself from Johnson. And that's what presumably Kamala should do also, even though her apologists are always insisting, oh, she can't do it. She can't break with the president. You can't do that. You can't say, of course you can. There's no rule. And say whatever the hell she wants. She's the standard bearer. Is that what you want as your candidate? Somebody who isn't going to tell you the truth? Who feels hamstrung? It's absurd. But that's their excuse. All right. So the sexual violence aspect of the defense, right? Because what Harris does over and over and over is justify our unconditional support for Israel, our ongoing delivery of weapons of murder. Right? They use those bombs that we keep supplying them with to blow up residences, hospitals, bomb refugee camps, right? That's what Israel is using our weapons to do. So what does Harris say to justify that, to defend it? Hamas committed unspeakable sex crimes, rapes. So I've had pushback. Oh, well, of course they did, because rape is a weapon of war. And so what if Israel's doing it back to Hamas, or back to Palestine? So what? Maybe it's really bad what Israel's doing, but that doesn't mean she's lying. That doesn't mean she's wrong to center and spotlight a couple of allegations by Israel, which we know must have happened. So that's the argument for her defenders. So I want to really nail this as best we can. Sexual violence in conflict. This is from the United Nations report on Israel, and they do quite a lot of analysis. And we'll talk about both what happened in what happened in Israel on the 7th, and then a little bit what happened in Gaza, because they're not the same. And often Israeli defenders conflate the two. They're like, well, what do you mean there was no rapes on October 7th? What about Amit Susanna? She's a hostage. She says she was raped. Okay, yes. But we're talking about what happened in Israel on the 7th, not what happened after that date in Gaza. So you're deliberately conflating the two. That doesn't mean it's okay what happened to Susanna. It means that the conversation is consistently brought back to October 7 over and over and over. That's because Israel bears a lot of the blame for what happened in Gaza, since they refused to negotiate in good faith to get the hostages back. And that has subjected the hostages to terrible violence, which is a big reason the families of the hostages are so angry and so feel like Israel, Netanyahu has to go, which he does. But here's what the UN actually said. Remember, Harris is definitive. She's absolutely insistent that multiple rapes occurred, that there was, that by Hamas, and that Israel was subject to unspeakable sex crimes. So here's what the United Nations concluded in their report. Reasonable grounds, not definitely, not even clear and convincing evidence, but reasonable grounds. You can't convict someone on reasonable grounds. You have to have actually beyond a reasonable doubt. They're saying they're reasonable. Okay, it is reasonable to believe it. We agree. But does the fact that it's reasonable to believe that there were victims subjected to rape, does that mean that you center it and you use that as a justification for killing tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people who had nothing to do with the event? Does that make it okay? So they say reasonable grounds. There are two, in this report, there are two separate incidents of rape that are described. One, two women being raped by armed elements. That's it. It is described as credible information describes the incident. Okay? May well have happened. May well have happened. Does that mean you use that as your defense? By the way, an argument was made, which I thought was pretty powerful. We don't know for sure that those, even if that happened, it wasn't necessarily Hamas that did it, because there were other militants who were involved, and there were other, I guess, pro-Palestine elements. She said definitely it was Hamas. Now, again, I'm not making excuses. This was a horrible atrocity that was committed. But the reason that Israel centers claims of sexual violence and rape is because it activates the reptilian aspects of your brain. And people stop saying, well, Israel's killed a whole lot of people. Israel's stealing land. I can get why their victims would respond with violence. But when you bring rape into it, when you use the word rape, it activates that reptilian primitive part of your brain, and you're unable to, view the perpetrators anything but completely inhuman. And you're not going to say, well, wait a sec, those folks that Israel's responding to, retaliating against, weren't even part of it. You can't even say that yourself a lot of times. But in any event, the reason I put this up is because the grounds for the rapes, there were two findings. One was two women, and then one was another outside a kibbutz. But with respect to the hostages, they found clear and convincing information. So not reasonable grounds, but there's stronger evidence of sexual violence practiced against at least one. I'm only aware of one victim of sexual violence during one hostage, and that's Amit Suzana. We talked about her. And I, it's very convincing what she says. It probably happened. It's awful. It's really, really awful. I mentioned there were two incidents that were found reasonable grounds of rape. So we talked about the clear and convincing in Gaza on a hostage. But I want to say, so there were one rape of 2 women by armed elements. The other was there was a verified an incident of the rape of a woman outside a bomb shelter. So I don't know what the verified means. If something is verified, I think you'd have more than reasonable grounds. I think what they mean verified is that they found at least one witness who said this happened. I think that's what they mean. Now we know a lot of other allegations have been debunked or found unproven. So yes, there's allegations. At least some are reasonable, some are credible. But none of that justifies our ongoing support of the genocide against the Palestinian people, almost none of whom had anything to do with October 7. And it doesn't, what the UN report actually concluded doesn't justify Harris's reliance on those reasonable grounds to justify what we're doing, which is completely wrong. The sexual assault that has been, where there's pretty good evidence, right? I mean, I believe Amit Suzana. You're supposed to believe women. I believe her. There's no one who says it didn't happen. As far as I can tell, she's a credible, reliable, responsible person. It's really awful. She was raped. And this is what happens. As one of my viewers, one of my loyal listeners has said, this is what happens in war. It's not really war. It's asymmetrical because there's one army, and that's the army of Israel that's destroying another country. But yes, this is what happens to hostages. It's terrible. But Israel bears much of the blame for this. I mean, first of all, look, you commit a crime, you're guilty of it. But Israel could have gotten the hostages out. Instead, Israel retaliated. Israel bombed. Israel killed. Israel shot. And I'm not the only one saying this. The reason Israel doesn't want to center too much, and the reason, by the way, Harris doesn't want to center to too significant a degree the experiences of the hostages, is because they know that people are going to say, well, wait, why didn't you get them out? If your concern is the hostages, why are you laying waste to all of Gaza? That's not going to get the hostages out. And the hostages' families are very, very well aware of the fact that it's Netanyahu and his government, and it's their failures that are why their loved ones are suffering. Their loved ones are dead in many cases. And we know 6 more were found dead, I believe, over the weekend. So it's a horrible story. And the families blame Bibi more than anyone else. And rightly so. But if you're going to blame Bibi, blame the U.S. government. Blame Biden-Harris. Because they failed to put the pressure, as Cenk says. You're not negotiating for the hostages. You're not pushing for a ceasefire, because if you were, you wouldn't be giving unlimited supplies of weapons of mass destruction to Israel. What the hostages' families want is they want peace. That's obviously not what Netanyahu wants. That's obviously not what Joe Biden wants. That's obviously not what Kamala Harris wants. And for that reason, I don't know how you can vote for her. I don't know how you can support her. I sure as hell can't. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. I have so much more topics. I mean, her position on fracking. Let me just put this up. This is very, very powerful, though, before we get to some other topics. Maybe we'll go a little over an hour. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum said they failed to do what they're supposed to do, get its sons and daughters home. It's that simple. And how do you do it? With peace. Some would say, well, no, wait a second. We can't just negotiate because then we're going to be giving Hamas incentive to do this again. If we don't hold them responsible, if we don't rip them apart, if we don't turn Gaza inside out, if we don't gut it like a fish, then they'll do it again. And here's my answer. Talk to Hamas. Dialogue with Hamas. Say, well, what are we going to do? We don't want this to happen to our people again. Yes, we're not bombing you right now. We're not going to kill you right now. We want our hostages back. We want our people back. How can we stop? How can we live together so you'll stop killing us? And presumably, if you say that in good faith and you mean it, then when Hamas says, well, stop stealing the land in the West Bank, give us freedom of movement in Gaza, open up the border with Egypt, start a process. You keep saying you believe in a two-state solution. Well, we think it should be one state. We want right of return. But hey, at least right now, give us self-determination in our land. And, then you get to a point where maybe they won't be killing people. Just one more point, because one of the arguments you keep hearing also in support of Israel, and this is something the Biden-Harris administration never stops doing, blaming Hamas. Oh, Israel's agreed. Israel's agreed to a deal. It's Hamas's fault that there's no deal. Well, the Hodges families know that's a complete load of crap. And they're Israeli. Of course it's the fault of the Netanyahu government. They're the ones who keep killing Hamas. They're the ones who keep killing Palestinians, Gazans, claiming they're killing Hamas militants when almost invariably they're not. They're killing women, children, men. So despite the bull crap coming out of Biden-Harris, it's not Hamas. It's, as the Hodges families get it, it's Netanyahu who's thwarting the deal with excuses and spins, just like the U.S. government. How can you support that? All right, it's been an hour. I guess I'll go. Yeah, you know what? You're just going to have to wait. I will come back tomorrow. I have a lot of topics. I have a lot of issues there where Harris fails all of them, right? Put that up on the screen again. Let's see if we can get that there. We'll talk more tomorrow about the border wall, fracking. We mentioned we focused to quite a degree, as I have been, for months now, the Biden-Harris support for Israeli genocide. But we'll focus tomorrow on the border wall, fracking, and maybe some of the other topics and other topics as well. But those are the other two I really want to discuss that I think really merit additional exploration. All right, I'll be back. And by the way, if you want to talk about, I've really hit endless war with Russia, which, by the way, is going terribly, right? Ukraine expanded the front, invaded Russia. At the time, I thought, well, maybe this is a good move tactically. Maybe it's even a good move strategically. They'll kind of maybe, ease up. Russia will ease up a little bit. We'll have to move forces out of Ukraine to defend against the invasion of Russia by Ukraine. It hasn't worked out that way. It hasn't worked out that way. So we'll talk maybe a little bit about that tomorrow and other topics. I hope you have a great afternoon. It is Monday. Enjoy your Labor Day. Again, I'm Hal Ginsberg. And, God, there's so many things I want to get to, but they'll just have to wait.